Hey, this is Chris Simpson from Mineral Mountain Time and the Gloria Record, and you're listening to the Rumors Are True podcast.
Welcome, this is Jeremy Allen Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true.
And that's more than a dress. It's a Grace Kelly movie. You can see my benefit. We'll leave it on my doorstep, or on my windowsill. I gotta take care of it. I gotta water it. And you can light the candle while I get the lights. The cactus needs more light. We gotta take care of it. And that's more than a dress. It's a Grace Kelly movie. We're dressed up to the nose. We'll make our grand exits. With prickers in our fingers. We try to take care of it. But we can't work like this. And all she says.
Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Dana, Bollen, and Andrew Mall from the Live Free or DIY podcast, as well as Dana's podcast, 2 Weeks Notice. Awesome conversation with these guys regarding the scene, music, and just the overall community. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Dana Bollen and Andrew Mall.
See my benefit. Well, yeah. And that's more than a dress. You can see my benefit. Well, yeah.
Andrew and Dana, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, guys. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
What up?
What up? What up? Tell me what's going on, guys, currently in your world. Just tell me what's going on new in your world, and let's go with Andrew first.
Oh, well, so my day job is as a professor at Northeastern University, and the great thing about this time of year is that there's really not much going on. Teaching is done, and I get to kind of pivot my energy to more passion projects and research and writing and spend a bit more time with my family. So that's kind of a nice part about my summer.
Yes. Dana.
Yeah, man. About to go on tour. I tour with bands. About to hit the road. I fly out in a couple of days, doing a run with Bayside and
Nice.
the Smoking Popes. Yeah.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, it's going to be sick.
That's awesome.
Great band, great people, great crew.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dana, the Smoking Post just played here just a couple nights ago. I saw it too late. Otherwise, I might have gone.
Yeah, they will be on this full run with us.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome. They're coming here to Jacksonville with Bouncing Souls and H2O, I think. Somewhere
Well, they're
soon.
just all over the place.
I know. I'm excited, actually. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
That's
Sweet.
a cool bill.
Yeah, it really is. It's so all over the place, but I think
Yeah.
how it should be, I guess. So
Yeah.
awesome, guys. Well, let's talk about growing up for you guys individually. Maybe bring me through some of those records, some of those concerts, those influences that kind of pushed you in the direction you guys both have went in as people over the years. Go, Dana. Go ahead and go first.
So I primarily listened to like hip hop, honestly, for probably up until like high school. And then it was Weezer's Blue album that really was my gateway, I think, to all this other stuff. I was absolutely obsessed with that record.
Yeah.
And then, I got into Pinkerton, also was obsessed with that. And so I kind of got into the scene a little bit late because I was born in 85. So, like, when I got into the Blue album, it was like probably 2000 or 99. So it was like 6 years after it came out, But those two records from Weezer were really pivotal for me. This record behind me by Piebald, We Are the Only Friends We Have.
It's a great record.
That's my favorite record all time. If you like put a gun on my head, I think, yeah. And then for like hardcore, Poison the Wells, Opposite of December was a big one for me.
It's a great record.
That was like huge. Yeah. Those are some important ones, I would say.
Was there any shows that kind of stuck out to you as a kid?
Yeah, the first like concert I ever went to, like ticketed concert that wasn't just like a VFW. It was Weezer, Saves the Day, and Ozma.
Wow.
Yeah, I like immediately fell in love with those bands as well. Ozma and Saves the Day. Let's see what else. I don't know. Another big show that stands out. It was Thursday, Thrice, and Coheed and Cambria. Still one of the best shows I've seen till this day. All of them were on their sophomore records, like on that album cycle. All their second records were coming out, and I don't know. That was just like an insane show. I don't know exactly why, but it's just still always stands out in my head. Yeah. But now, I would say even like lately, it's like, I don't know, going to like Red Rocks like a couple years ago for the first time was just like unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or some of these festivals, Furnace Fest, it's like there's a reason I keep going back.
Yeah,
so that would probably be my answer. Yeah,
very cool. Andrew.
Yeah, for me it's a little bit different. I graduated high school in 97, so I'll date myself here explicitly because I think it's important. I didn't know anything about loud rock and roll music until like Nirvana exploded in 91. So like middle school and early high school for me was all about discovering like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Smashing Pumpkins and all these bands. My first exposure to the idea that like there was interesting rock music that existed outside of this kind of commercial ecosystem was watching Beavis and Butthead, and they were making fun of the John Spencer blues explosion. And I was like, man, that record sounds sick, actually. So I got the CD just because they had made fun of it. The CD was called Orange. I think it's their third record.
It's a good record.
And I loved it. And around the same time, I started going to local shows, mostly like punk and hardcore shows. And in my experience, these were like two totally different worlds, right? There was like the music you heard on the radio and the arena concerts I was going to. So like U2 and Metallica, and the Smashing Pumpkins, and then local bands was just like, it was entirely different. The two, never connected. And in my head, that like I never really thought that local bands were anything other than that. And then my younger cousin introduced me to Fugazi. She's like, hey, if you like punk and hardcore, you need to listen to this band. And you also need to know that these bands tour outside of just where you live.
Yeah.
So the Fugazi record was Steady Died of Nothing. That was the first one I listened to, which is one of their most sparse records. Like it's really... it stands out amongst their discography as being the most stripped down. And like a real back to basics approach to writing and recording. And then my freshman year of college, my freshman year roommate, his name's Brad. I grew up in North Jersey. He grew up on the North Shore of Chicago, and he was exposed to like indie rock and local punk way more than I was. And so he introduced me to just like, I guess we would still call it DIY to a certain extent, but like indie rock that was touring. So, I started listening to Modest Mouse and The Promise Ring and Joan of Arc. So those records really started to get a lot of spins in our dorm room. So the second Modest Mouse record, Lonesome Crowded West.
Great record.
and then the second Promising record, Nothing Feels Good, it was just like super poppy.
So good.
So that kind of stuff really, really grabbed me. I would say one of the records from that period of my life that I still come back to, and I'm like slightly embarrassed by it, is Juliana Theory, Understand This Is a Dream.
Yeah.
It's like when I put it on, I'm like, I can't believe this music still connects with me. And I think it connects with me in a very different way at age 46 than it did at, age 26 or 2020 even, whenever that record came out. But, seeing them play a couple times at Furnace Fest, including that record in its entirety, and like going back and trying to connect with that older version of myself, it's been like an interesting process, I think, and one that I think I enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Very, very cool. I love that. I can relate to a lot of those records as well. Definitely, was into that whole hardcore emo world in the 90s. Still love a lot of those records that you mentioned. Yeah, man, I'm 47 myself, so I definitely am in the same vein, at least. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. I love hearing other people that were impacted by a lot of those records. And I did get to see John Spencer Blues Explosion one time, which was really cool. They played in Jacksonville, and it was awesome. And it was the Orange record, I think.
I don't think I ever got to see them play or see him play in any of his projects, which is wild because he was based in New York for a lot of time, and I was growing up in North Jersey, but I just never heard about it. So
yeah, dude. Well, you missed out, I guess. Awesome. Hey, I want to continue with you, Andrew, briefly, and let's talk about your research project, which I was lucky to be a part of. A year ago, you asked me to come on and talk about kind of my experience in hardcore and punk rock and that whole world. Kind of explain your research project that you've got ongoing right now, and yeah, just bring me through that.
Yeah, sure, Jeremy. So I have two major research projects right now, and they're both connected. They're connected to each other. So one of the research projects is on Furnace Fest itself. I've been going to Furnace Fest every year since it was reborn in 2021, and I bring a colleague, Nate, with me. He teaches music at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. Every year since 22, we've brought undergraduate students as research assistants. Last year, we brought even a third faculty member. And in that project, we interview the organizers, Chad and Johnny, pretty regularly. We stay connected to the Facebook community, the Furnace Fest community. We survey participants pretty much every year. And we do like on the spot random interviews with people at the festival. In the Furnace Fest project, we started off being really interested in nostalgia, like, at age 46 or 47 or whatever, what role does nostalgia play in connecting us to events like Furnace Fest or, like reunion tours or anniversary tours, that kind of stuff. And I think it's an interesting concept to think about. Like, are we going to see these events, to see these bands because we're excited about new music, because we're excited about the current, world of music, or how much of that is because we're trying to connect with some kind of romanticized vision of the past of who we used to be? And of course, it's neither one nor the other. These bands still tour regularly. They play with current bands, younger bands. So it's a little bit of both. And one of the things I love about Furnace Fest is it's introduced me to a whole bunch of new bands that I don't think I would have encountered if I hadn't started getting back into the music. We've since turned that project into a mental health needs assessment project. So we want to understand what role music plays in our continued health and well-being, both mentally and emotionally, right? So like, is going to concerts, is going to events, is connecting to these communities significant to our well-being, to how we view ourselves, to how we navigate the world, and to keep us centered. Another major question we have in that project is, people who are involved in musical subcultures like hardcore, are we more or less susceptible to certain mental health issues? So is our risk factor for clinical depression higher or lower than that of the general population? Or suicidality, or PTSD, or substance use and abuse, or intimate partner abuse, right? Like those kinds of things we want to know. Because if there is a significantly higher risk factor, then there's a potential for us to intervene and to really dramatically improve not only our lives individually, but the health of the community's overall health.
Yeah.
So that's one project. The other project really dovetails into that. It's just about DIY scenes overall in general. So what is it about DIY scenes that connect people to each other, that build communities that maybe exist beyond the music? What challenges have those communities faced, and what changes have we witnessed as we've been involved in those scenes? If we think about those challenges and changes, then that, I would say naturally, but maybe it's not so naturally, it leads me to questions about, like, what do we need to do to ensure that these communities stay strong, stay resilient, stay available to people in their 40s, but also to people in their teens and their 20s.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what that project is about, and it's been the basis of the podcast of Live Free or DIY. In the research project, we did another large survey, different from the Furnace Fest survey, and then we interviewed a bunch of people to get their life stories, really, and that's how you and I first connected. One-on-one is interviewing when I was interviewing you for that project. So yeah, it's been a fun journey over the last couple of years, and both projects are continuing. I'm looking for funding to build on both of them. So yeah,
that's exciting.
Fingers crossed that this leads to something bigger and greater.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate you having me included. I think I was really honored to be a part of that, and stoked for you to do something that you're passionate about. And yeah, I definitely can relate to it. I don't have the patience to do what you're doing, so
it's definitely like
I applaud you.
Yeah, it's definitely like a long-term thing. I mean, my hope with that project is that we get to a point where we've collected enough data that we can start to make actionable recommendations that work not only in a city like Boston or down in Florida where you live, but are like attuned to the different kinds of cities and the different regions where people live. Like the challenges that DIY communities face, they're by and large the same, but they have different local flavors. So what recommendations I might make to Boston would be different from the recommendations I would make to a city council in Florida or the Midwest or Pacific Northwest.
Awesome. Very cool, man. Well, I applaud you for your efforts, and it's cool that you can look at it from a different perspective than your normal just average, scene goer or concert goer or whatever. It's cool that you look at it in a different aspect. I think it's cool. It's intriguing. And yeah, that's exciting, man. I love that, Andrew. Cool. Awesome. Dana, well, let's talk about 2 Weeks Notice podcast, man. I really enjoy your podcast. It's really awesome. Getting to meet you last year at Furnace Fest was really cool, and getting to connect over the last couple of months has been cool as well. So Jess, bring me through maybe what inspired you to start the podcast and how it's kind of been overall for you.
Yeah, man. First of all, can you hear me? I had some technical difficulties. Okay, great.
You're good.
Yeah, that was really cool last year at Furnace Fest when you came up and said hi to me. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that. You had it chilling with your cigar, and we had a great chat, a little heart to heart. I enjoyed it, so thank you.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Because I had listened to your show, and I was like, we're like doing the same thing. So, initially it started as a travel log when I was over in Europe. My buddy was like, oh, dude, like while you're over there, you should do a podcast. It'd be a cool way to like keep up with friends and family. Because I was over there for like 4 months in 2019, and it was just me kind of babbling by myself, basically like Bill Burr style. Yeah. Only not as funny because I'm not Bill Burr. But I don't know. And when I came back, I just really liked it. So I started the 2 Week Notice podcast, and it originally it didn't have much to do with music. It was just like that travel log, and like it was me and people I worked with in the past telling like work stories, hence the name. And then like I went on tour with Piebald. We were opening for Dashboard Confessional, and like I was doing like kind of like a tour log during that. Like I interviewed Travis in the van, I remember, and I was just kind of telling stories from the road. And then that tour was in February of 2020. We came home and the world just like shut down. So at that point, sometime during the pandemic, I started interviewing people. It's like, all right, everyone's just kind of sitting around. I think a lot of podcasts started during that time for sure.
Sure.
People were just sitting around. So I was just like, well, who do I know? And I texted Chris Carrabba, and he came on. So then it kind of, that helped with that big name. It kind of had, started gaining some traction. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. I just started interviewing musicians, people who I met on the road, or where it was like a friend of a friend, or a lot of cold calls, just like sending a DM on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Same here.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? You're probably surprised at how many people say yes. You're like, oh, no way. That was so sick. Like, I don't even know this person. You just shot in the dark, right?
Yep.
So it's cool. And then, what I love is, like, sometimes you become friends with those. Oftentimes.
Yep.
Sometimes maybe that's the only time you ever talk to that person, and that's still awesome. But there's a lot of people who I still text with and I'm still friends with, or I'll go to their show still.
Absolutely.
So it's a beautiful thing. Like, and it's interesting how, like, because you asked about, like, the journey that it's taken. It's like kind of on accident. I started touring and I started this podcast, two completely separate things, right? Like I said, it started as a travel log, but if you fast forward like 6 years or whatever, it's like some of these tours have helped me get podcast guests, and the podcast has helped me with touring. So it's kind of cool. Or even just like right now, like, like Andrew reaching out to me for this gig, for the Live for Your DIY thing. It's like, I didn't know it was going to lead to anything, but here we are. Like, I'm talking to you. It's just cool. Like how, what you can turn it into, and the networks that can come of it, and just the connections. It's beyond
Absolutely.
just putting out some recording for people to listen to. It kind of takes on a life of its own in a way.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love hearing that. I definitely can relate to what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. Just being able to interact with, potential heroes, potential people that have really influenced your life, and getting a random text from someone that you're like, oh my God, my 16-year-old self would be losing my mind right now.
Yeah.
My 47-year-old mind is losing my mind right now. So it's like, totally can relate to that. Hey, Dana, bring me through some of your favorite episodes, and maybe some of the ones that you look fondly on.
Well, first of all, anytime I get Buzz McGrath of Unearthed, he's, whether or not you like Unearthed, it doesn't matter. He's just the funniest person
That's
ever.
awesome.
He's probably been on 4 times, and I have him as much as I can, because he's got pretty wild stories of, like, stealing golf carts and getting pulled over by a police helicopter while on a golf cart. And
Oh my God.
like, he's just the funniest. Let's see, Dustin from Thrice. I had him. That was a good one. Tades from, both the guys. I had Tades from Hot Mulligan and Chris from Hot Mulligan. Those were both favorites. I love those guys. Anytime I have Eric from Mom Jeans, or Matt Pryor from the Get Up Kids.
Yeah.
It's Nathan from Microwave. I remember I had Max Bemis from Say Anything. That was he's an example of, like, we still text once in a while. It's like, wow, it's so cool. I remember on the road, I was on a tour recently with Military Gun, and, like, I was working for The Story So Far, but Military Gun was on the bill, and interviewing Ian in their van, it was just like, this is so cool,
That's amazing.
So those are some standouts, but I mean, there's so many, like Vinny Caruana. Anytime I get to talk to him, or Walter Schreifels was a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Obviously, I'm assuming the podcast has exceeded what you thought it would, but, like, I guess overall, like, do you feel like it's achieved what you wanted and more? I guess just maybe give me your opinion on that.
That's a great question, and one that actually makes me appreciate what I've already done more, like, as I think about that in the moment, because I always get bummed out thinking back on, like, I get bummed out because, I had to put it on the back burner whenever I go on the road, first of all, because it's really hard to, like, do both. And then doing this Live for Your DIY podcast, which I fell in love with as well, but that puts it on the back burner even more. So I haven't been able to keep up as much as I would like. But when you ask me that question in the way that you just did, it's like, oh, wow, like, I should still be a little bit more grateful, or, like, that would be a good reminder at times when I get bummed out, because, I never thought I would talk to Max Bemis or Dustin Kensrue or Walter Schreifels or whatever, like, so I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, it's like, it's pretty cool. And, the other thing is, like, launching this Live for Your DIY podcast, I forgot how difficult it is to launch a podcast. And, like, would
Oh, yeah.
like get an audience. I forgot, and it made me like look back. It's like, oh wow, like look what I built with this other thing. I just kind of, just it was just interesting to look at, almost from an outside lens. It's because I'm kind of not struggling, but it's been a big push to get people to listen to this new show. So it made me like really appreciate what I have already done with the other show. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let me ask you one more question, and then we'll dive into the new podcast. What's some dream interviews for you that you have not been able to get yet?
Oh wow, that's a good one. Let's see, someone from Daft Punk.
Oh wow, that would be wild.
That'd be cool. Andre 3000 would be cool.
Wow.
Someone from Weezer. I mean, I'd love to interview Rivers, but I don't know. He's like Rivers Cuomo is like a weird. I don't know if you've heard interviews with him, but he's kind
awkward.
of he's an intense. Yeah. I mean, I still would love to. Mark Hoppus.
Sure.
I'd love to talk with Tom DeLonge about aliens. That would be a blast, actually. Tom DeLonge. I'm going to say that.
That's awesome. That's fair. Yeah. Maybe that'll happen in the future. You never know.
You never know.
That'd be dope.
Maybe.
Sweet, man. Well, let's talk about the Live Free and DIY podcast that you guys are both venturing on. Kind of bring me through it. Andrew, go ahead and maybe bring me through this and kind of bringing Dana into the fold. And yeah, just bring me through that.
Yeah, so I came up with the concept of the podcast as I was kind of writing up the proposal for the research project for which I interviewed you, the research project on do-it-yourself music communities. So I wrote a grant application. I was like, it'd be cool if after we do all this research, we just kind of collect all those stories, then create a podcast out of it. And I had no idea how much work that would be. And I talked to a student of mine and I was like, hey, how much do you think this would cost? He's like, here's how much I would charge. And I was like, all right, let me like increase that by 10 to 20% and then put that into the grant application. So I won some money through the grant process. That's what enabled me to do the research, to hire a research assistant, to go to a bunch of shows, to transcribe interviews, and also to hire Dana. So, my research assistant and I, his name's Anthony, we listened to a pile of podcasts over a year ago, last March and April. And I reached out to a bunch of those producers, and Dana and I really connected. Like we had our first conversation almost exactly a year ago. And I kind of pitched the idea of the podcast to him. I was like, hey, here's the research project I'm working on. Pretty much how I just explained it to you, Jeremy. We're talking about do-it-yourself music communities, changes, challenges, thinking about resilience. And he was like, all right, you're like this, you're a professor at a ginormous institution. And I'm just some tiny podcast producer and tour manager. Like, how is this going to work? So, Dana can chime in too, but like those early conversations, I think we're both of us feeling each other out to see like how serious we could be about working together, what the collaborative relationship would be. He is my contractor. I've paid him through Northeastern to do this work, but it's turned into much more of a collaborative partnership than just him being my employee. And also Dana would be probably the first one to tell you that he's done way more work than I've paid him to do. So next time I write a grant for a podcast, I know to ask for a whole lot more money. So those are the logistics of how Dana and I started working together. But I pitched it to him. Pretty much what you hear like reflects creative decisions on both of our parts. But I pitched him like that. I was like, listen, I want to interview a bunch of people and I want to have multiple voices on each episode. And I want each episode to be about a theme. And the overall idea is thinking about how to make DIY music scenes stronger.
Yeah.
So we ran with that. That's pretty much all I had at the time. So we ran with that in terms of working together to, choose people to interview and pitching the show idea to them. And then building a list of interview questions and then theming the episodes or coming up with the episode themes based on the interviews that we did. We did all the interviews in July, mostly in August and September last year. Then we started working together, me and him, to do the writing of the voiceovers and the recording.
Oh, cool.
That was mostly end of November through January, maybe even early February, I forget. And then Dana's been doing all the posts since in February and March. He had been assembling episodes as we went along. So Dana had rough drafts of a bunch of episodes in December and January. Yeah.
That's awesome. Very
But yeah,
cool.
we've pretty much had everything in the can since February, and it's really just kind of putting the pieces together and getting everything finalized for the launch to make sure it could happen. And it was Dana who said, "Hey, we need to drop these episodes every week," and I was like, "All right, cool," because we have them done, so we're dropping them every week.
That's amazing. I love that. Dan, yeah, bring me through your perspective of being able to work with Andrew and how having him bring you on.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much nailed it. Let's see. If I were to go back, I would say the first thing was cool because I just love the fact that it was through the Furnace Fest community. That was how we weren't connected on the socials at all, other than we were both in that Facebook group. So it just kind of speaks to like how special that community is,
Sure.
and kind of speaks to what we actually talk about on the community episode of Live Free or DIY. It's like that. This podcast in itself is a product of that. You know, I remember it was a Facebook message request, which somehow I stumbled upon because you don't get like notifications for those. Like I usually don't see those when they come in, but somehow I did, like not long after. And I remember I was in the middle of like 5 tours, like back to back to back to back. I'm trying to think. I had just done a Brian Sella solo tour. Then I did a Bayside tour, Bayside and Finch. And then I was like just about to go out with The Story So Far, and then Alkaline Trio after that. And there was a Front Bottoms run in there. So I was just like right in the middle of all this, and like, was maybe coming home for like a week at the most, and then just going back out. And was just trying to keep up with 2 week notice, as I mentioned earlier. So it was just like, oh man, I don't know if I have time for this, dude. But I was like really stoked and honored at the fact that someone had recognized me for the work that I'd already done in my other podcast, because that one doesn't make money. Not that it's about that, but it was,
Sure.
It was nice. And so to get some money from this, it was nice because, like, sometimes, usually like at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, like you mentioned, January, February, that's like slow season for touring. So It worked out really nicely to have a gig with some income, for that time. So that was great. And that was probably why it got done during that time, because we had the recordings for the interviews done way before that, like he mentioned. And so I was able to just really pour everything into it during that time, like January, February, even before that, like December and stuff. But so, yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but even the work that it ended up being was more than I even realized, like even having some experience doing a podcast. But I would say like it made me a better podcaster, even though I felt like I was, very confident to be able to handle this project, like with my experience through 2 week notice. This is just, it was a whole different animal.
Yeah.
And I really think I became a better podcaster, even throughout this series, like from the pilot episode to the last episode, which, it's 6 episodes in season 1, not including bonus stuff that we'll put out. But even just from episode 1 to episode 6, there was somewhere in the middle, not just editing wise, but also like creative process wise. I remember something clicked within me when we hopped on Zoom one day, and I was like, I know exactly how this needs to go. I think it was like literally right halfway through. And Andrew was like, all right, let's talk about it. What do you got for me? And I just said the idea, and he was like, that sounds great. Let's do it. So, and that's what's been really cool about working with Andrew from day one. Like, he had this original vision, and then I would just come in with all these sometimes crazy ideas, but like whatever it is that I had to say, or I'm like, I think we should do this. He was always like ready to listen to me, and like, and he was like always in my corner. I don't think there was anything. Maybe he would help me realize something. That's a bad idea, right? Like I would say that, and he'd be like, yeah. But like he would always, just back me in whatever I wanted to do. I guess technically in the contract it says like I'm a consultant, right? I think there was like, I think we talked about this recently. There was like maybe one time or maybe 2 times where I was like, as you're a professional consultant, I think that we should go with this. It was like about the artwork or something, but yeah. So it's been awesome, and I got a new friend out of it. So, it's
awesome.
I think it's been wonderful working with Andrew.
That's so cool, dude. what is it like to get paid for a podcast? Just kidding. I wouldn't know. I have no clue. I know you don't. I definitely can relate to not making a penny off this. I kid when I ask that. What inspired some of the guests that you guys have had and brought on? What was there people you were going after you couldn't get, or like kind of bring me through the process of picking your initial guests.
Yeah, we put together a list. The two of us together with Anthony, my RA. I don't know. I forget how long that initial list was, Dana. It might have been close to 20 people, and most of them we knew or had been in touch with before.
Sure.
And only a handful we were like, this might be a reach. Like, so like we can talk about Norman Brannon as a great example. Like neither of us had spoken with him before. Neither of us even had contact information for him. So we had to like go around and talk to people who knew him to get contact information. But most of the other folks, we had been in touch with before. So putting together that list was really the seed for it. And we wanted to have a lot of people who have been involved in DIY as performers, as musicians, but not only those people. Like we wanted people who had put on shows. Mm-hmm. Two of the guests are also music industry professors that I've known.
Oh, that's right.
So, they have kind of a different set of experiences in addition to their professional experiences. We also want to make sure we are representing different perspectives from different identities. Mm-hmm. It was important to us to make sure we had at least one person who wasn't a dude. It was important to us to make sure we had at least one person who wasn't white, to have at least one person who wasn't straight. So, call it what you want, but I think it's important. Yeah, it's intentional to make sure that this isn't just like white dude fest, but, represents the diversity that truly is in our scenes more and more these days.
Absolutely. Dana, bring me, was it easy getting a lot of these people? Like he kind of mentioned, you knew.
Yeah.
Were they all on board pretty quickly?
I would say yes, definitely. Credit to Anthony, our research assistant. He was like, this was towards the end. I think we had pretty much everyone selected. He's like, I really think you should get Joey from Koyo. And I was like, I don't know. I felt bad because he had literally just done a 2-week notice recording like the month earlier. And I still haven't put that episode out, by the way. I'm trying to get it out soon. But so I had just, and that was the second time that he had done 2-week notice. So I'm like, I don't want to bother this dude again, And I kind of turned down the idea at the time. And then I slept on it. And I was like, you know what? He's right. Joey would be great. And then, so I invited him, sent the email dude, and it's okay to say no. I know, I just bugged you to do my other podcast, but we would love to have you. So he said yes, and you know what? It's one of the strongest voices on the panel. He's one of 4 people who made it on every single episode.
Wow.
And if you just listen to him speak, it's funny because he's probably younger than the average age of people we have on the show, but he's so smart. He's smarter than me for sure. He's just so well spoken and just so wise and beyond his years, I think. So that was a special one for me. Luke from Piebald, that was a really tough one to get. I didn't know anyone who knew him. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, that was easy. Luke was the first one that popped in my mind because when it comes to DIY, he literally checks all the boxes. The guy lives on a farm and grows his own food.
Wow.
And the bands he's been in, Piebald, Fast Break, In My Eyes, and just everything we do, being on the road with that guy, just how he operates, he's just always been, he's just the epitome of what DIY is. And he's really well spoken as well. So it was just a no-brainer asking him. Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's cool.
Ace,
that's awesome.
I love Ace Enders. I love him because that guy's just all heart. He's all heart. Love hearing from him. Chad and Johnny, of course. Allie Littman, she's super DIY and so rad. Brandon Davis of Vanna. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me chime in because a handful of the interview guests actually came out of the research project. So, Jeremy, I don't know if you remember, but when we talked last summer, towards the end, I was like, hey, I'm I'm doing this podcast project, still putting together the guest list, but if your name comes up, is that something that you'd be willing to do? I never reached out to you because we decided on a different kind of approach for choosing the interviewees, but there was a whole bunch of people. As Anthony and I interviewed people, we're like, okay, we were also keeping notes in our head, like, could this person be a really cool guest? So Allie was someone that Anthony interviewed. She had responded to the survey, and she had put in her email address as someone who'd be open to talking, and Anthony spoke with her. And so that was the name that he pitched. He's like, she was great, so you should talk to her and think about her. And her voice is also, I mean, everyone's voice is strong, but she's got some really great experiences that I think are really localized here in the Boston area, the Eastern Mass area. And also, and this doesn't come up too much in the clips that we used, but like, she's a working mom. And so like her perspective is someone who, has to really work to balance her time and make sure her family's cared for, and then also pour her energy into the local DIY scene and her band. Like, cause she works as a promoter, as a show promoter too. There's just like,
unbelievable.
And she has a full-time job. So like, I can't imagine doing all that stuff. I find it hard enough to have a full-time job.
I know.
She's got a band, and she puts on shows, and she runs the festival in Salem, Mass. It's like, oh my gosh, how do you do all that?
That is a lot. That's amazing though.
Another voice that came out of those series of interviews for the research project was Tony, this videographer who works as a videographer in the Boston underground scene, the Boston DIY scene. So we pretty much only feature him in the episode on exposure. But, key to my thinking on that episode was this Boston Globe article. They really exposed the underground scene to like a larger audience. And it resulted in a bunch of basement shows getting shut down. And so what I wanted was the perspective of someone who was a member of that community and that scene and witnessed that whole thing in late 2023. So he was one person that spoke to me during the research project. And then, I wanted to get his voice officially on the podcast as well.
That's cool, man. I love that. I love the angle you guys are going. It's really intriguing to me. I've listened to the Norm Brannon one. I need to listen to the other ones, but that's and I really enjoyed it, by the way, for the record. What future guest? I know you said this is season 1. What, do you guys have anyone in mind for season 2 and upcoming seasons?
We were just talking about this. Well, we don't even know 100% if season 2 is going to happen yet, but we did meet yesterday to kind of talk about some stuff that we have with season 1, just like some follow-up items. And we threw a few names out there of people we would like to get for season 2. There's some people.
That's exciting.
There's some
I don't want to jinx it because we don't even know if it's going to happen yet, so I don't want to jinx it.
Dude, I get it. I understand.
But I can. So like Vinny Caruana was going to do season 1. It didn't work out. He had some stuff going on at the time. So like he's someone that we'd probably reach out to again. Vinny's the legend. We talked about like Pat Flynn. He was a big one because Professor Andrew Mall has done a panel thing with him. So he's like had him do. Pat's he would be perfect.
Pat would be awesome. Pat Flynn would be awesome on this podcast. Yeah. I did organize. Dana's right. I organized a talkback panel with him and 2 other people involved in DIY music, and we did that in Cambridge, Mass. last August. Had 24 people show up to this tiny venue and just had like an open conversation, and it was lovely to see the folks involved in that panel, and Pat was one of them, just kind of give their time. I guess they weren't giving their time because I paid them, but to provide their experience and their expertise and just really be open to a conversation. And it was a really participatory conversation. There's lots of questions from the audience too, which was nice.
That's cool.
Kind of felt like how I run class. So, to have people in kind of like an open environment like that was great.
That's awesome, man. What's the response been like for you guys? I know, Dana, you mentioned, starting a new podcast and how it takes time to grow. What's the response been like?
So my favorite story, I mean, it just happened. Like I was at an I Am the Avalanche show a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't even trying to talk up the podcast. I was talking to these new acquaintances that I just met that night. And someone else like kind of walked right up to us and was just like, "Oh, Dana, like what's up? How you been? How's the new podcast?" And these new acquaintances were like, "You have a podcast? Tell me about it." So I was like, I like really didn't, I'm not always good at talking things up like about myself in that moment. So I just started to explain it, and literally like, I don't know, I was maybe not even a minute into explaining it. Some dude who I didn't know who he was also walks up to this circle and he's like, dude, sorry to interrupt, guys. Dana, I love the new podcast. Like the timing of it was so perfect. And like, he had like just repeated whatever it was I had just been saying. So that was like a really cool moment. And then like, honestly, like they were asking me more questions, and the kid that walked up, he goes, "May I?" And I was like, "Yes." And he just stepped in and like answered all the questions for me and explained it for me. And it also led to this like 10 to 15-minute conversation about the scene and DIY music and all this stuff, which is exactly what it's all about, like this podcast. So that was a really cool moment. I mean, I'd like to get it to more listeners, which we're working on that. That's why I'm like making all these reels and constantly relentlessly posting on the socials. But like the feedback that I have got has been unbelievable. Like just people that get it, like the whole point, like just
it makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. Andrew, your perspective on the response.
So Dana handles most of the socials, and so he sees the comments and the questions that come in, and the messages that he gets too. So my experience is kind of watching that as an interested observer, but not someone who's doing a whole ton of promo, because I don't really know how to do any of that stuff. But I do get comments and texts from friends and colleagues who've been listening to it. So one really good example is one of my younger sisters texted me, and she was like, "Hey, I feel like I'm learning so much about you by listening to this podcast." So sometimes with family, you don't often talk about your work, right? Like you connect over other things, or you have other things that you need to talk about with your siblings or your partner or your parents. So yeah, with her, like she was listening to it, and it was nice to have her say that out loud. It was great. Same thing from like colleagues of mine here at work. We're all music professors, but we all have like different areas of interest, and so to have some of those folks listen in, and then say, "Oh, hey, I feel like I'm learning so much about not only about the DIY music scenes itself, but they know me as a professional instructor and teacher and researcher." So for them to kind of connect the dots between the sides of me that they know well to this maybe more public facing side has been really interesting to watch.
That's cool. Do you feel like season 1 accomplished what you wanted to set out to do?
Man, I love season 1. I think it's, I'm not really sure what I wanted it to do. I wanted to get a bunch of voices from a bunch of perspectives and amplify them. And I think in the first episode, I say, like, I've got no illusions that we're going to name all these problems and put out this podcast and solve all the problems. But I think starting conversations, whether those conversations continue at an I Am the Avalanche show, or they continue with someone talking back to their car stereo where they're streaming the podcast, or continue in, a podcast recording room like this one, that's been really gratifying for me. We can't talk so much about season 2 yet because this has been a funded project, a grant funded project, and I haven't written a grant to fund season 2 yet. Right. So this isn't like an ongoing endeavor like Dana's 2-week notice, where, when we have the time, we record and then we put it out. It was a lot of work to do everything that we did to do season 1. And I expect season 2 to be the same amount of work, if not more, if we have more guests or want to produce more episodes. So just thinking about blocking that time out and making sure that we have, the money to pay the people that do the work, including Dana and anyone else we might hire to help on the editing and production side. Like that's an ongoing process that we haven't solved that piece of the puzzle yet.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love hearing that. I love that you guys have, like I said, the angle that you're taking out. I enjoy that it is a different perspective than, like I said, your average just scene kid concert goer. It's cool. I love that you guys are digging deep into it. I think it's cool.
Well, one thing I didn't want it to be was Dana's podcast again. Not that
Totally.
I love Dana's podcast, and I love podcasts where we sit down with one band member or maybe two members from the same band and just like hear about the music and their influences and their backgrounds. But that's never what I wanted this podcast to be. Like I was thinking of like big studio productions like This American Life or Radio Lab.
Yeah.
Where we're building stories and narratives out of many different interviews. And that's what I really wanted. Something that kind of approach.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I feel like you did accomplish with the episode I listened to. It sounded fantastic. So that's awesome, guys. Awesome. Well, I know you guys can't predict the future, but what do you think the future looks like for you guys individually?
I'll go first.
I know I can predict Dana's future. He's going on tour.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. So I look forward to hopping on the road with Bayside. Got another leg with them. So I have one in June, then one in September. I'm going to do a run with Unearthed later in the year. It's
fun.
Not announced yet, but I always love working with those guys. Got some Piebald gigs, stuff that also isn't announced yet. So I guess there's a lot that I can't say. I will be at Furnace Fest. You going to be there, Jeremy?
I might. It depends on the sitch. I'm not opposed to it. There's some life things have happened lately. So,
Right on.
My daughter moved in primarily. So, that those type of things. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I would love to, for sure.
I hope you can make it, man. I'd love to see you there again.
Thank you. Yeah, same here.
Same
here.
But yeah, so it's just a lot of touring and a lot of podcast stuff for me. Professor,
Very cool.
What about you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to do a lot of writing right now. And I'm largely failing because writing is hard work.
Yes,
and
it is.
It's lonely work. But if the pieces come together, then. So I don't know if listeners know this or people who haven't tried to write a book. So not only is the writing take time, but once you have a book manuscript, getting it published, even if someone bites on the first pitch, it's still at least a year, closer to 18 months or 2 years before it actually sees the light of day. So, if you're listening to this podcast today, then maybe look for new books from me in 2 years. One of the books I'm really excited about is going to be reporting on the research that we've done at Furnace Fest. So I was working with my research collaborator, his name's Nate, just last week to start to put together what we hope that book could be. And we're going to try and do some collaborative writing, maybe even over Furnace Fest weekend in October, maybe set up a retreat where we take some time away from our families and work just to kind of sit down, put some heads together, knock some stuff out. So yeah, that's one of the projects for sure. If it comes out the way that we're envisioning it, it's going to be a great book that is going to be, useful to people, to like college students and music professors, but also useful to people who are excited not only about Furnace Fest, but about these kinds of communities overall. So we're going to do our best in that work to amplify the voices that we've collected over the last 4 years of research at Furnace Fest.
That's cool, man. That's exciting. I love hearing that, guys. Dana, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation, getting to know you guys over the last year or so. It's been really cool. And yeah, it's just awesome that you guys are being able to highlight some of the areas that have impacted you, obviously, and many others. And so cool just to hear your perspective. And I'm really excited for what you guys have accomplished and what you're going to potentially do in the future as well. And individually as people and your work lives and podcasts and all that stuff, that's just really cool. I'm really happy for you guys. So thank you guys so much for spending time with me and kind of bringing me through this endeavor.
Hey, thank you, listener, for tuning in again and again. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook at The Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, you know the drill. So thank you for that. Thank you to Dana, Bollen, and Andrew Mall. So honored to have you on the podcast to talk shop. It's really cool to hear your perspectives, and I'm really stoked for the future for your podcasts. So thank you again to Dana and Andrew. Got some incredible artists on the horizon, guys, and you know it. Nostalgia is still a heck of a drug.
The podcast is produced by Wesley Hill, artwork by Jared Chase Bowser, and music by Brian Jarin. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, producer, and man of many talents, Brian Jarin.